Hey, welcome back. It's Amy Scott Grant, your favorite spiritual ass kicker. And I want to give you some tips and pointers today on how to clear a space. Okay, this is something I get asked about this a lot. Okay, and clearing a space is so simple. It's nothing that you have to have somebody else come in and do. So what do I mean when I say clear a space? I'm talking about when something in a space, and by space, I mean it could be a drawer, it could be a room, it could be a house, it could be a barn, it could be a property, a lake, a specific tree. I almost said Pacific, right? A Pacific tree. Could be a tree in the Pacific. But it could be really, like space, I mean anything, okay? Anything, right? It could be a hospital, it could be absolutely anything, okay? So clearing a space, that's when I say clearing a space. Now we defined what we mean by space. Now when we're talking about a clearing, you know what a clearing is, right? But if we're clearing a space, it means that we're just like shifting the energy in that space. If there's anything funky, there's anything that, if you ever like walked into a space and been like, ooh, it's creepy in here, like something is off. Or walked into a space and went, oh, I just love this room. It feels so good, so nice. And right? We're talking about the space itself. Sometimes a lot of times a person's energy can affect a space, yes. But we're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about the space itself. So that's what I mean by space clearing, is shifting out any like icky energy that's in a space and making it just feel good and wonderful, right? So that's what a space clearing is. Now, why might you want to clear a space? Well, maybe you have to spend some time in the space. I've been to, visit friends and family and been like, wow, this is the room I'm staying in, huh? Not to sound snobby, like not because I didn't like the furnishings in it or I didn't like the way it was decorated, but because the space felt ick. And for me, like I'm sensitive to that kind of stuff. And if you're an empath, you're the same way, right? So you could be in a space and be like, wow, I really don't know if I'll be able to sleep in this room. And it has nothing to do with whether or not the bed's comfortable or the sheets are soft or the room gets dark enough, right? It has to do with how the energy feels in the space. So same thing with hotels. Sometimes I walk into a hotel room and it feels amazing and I don't have to do a thing. And other times I walk into a hotel room and I'm like, I immediately start clearing. I'm like, somebody left some nasty energy in here. Right? We don't really, like, you don't want to think about the kinds of things that go on in hotel rooms, right? So I try not to think too hard about that. I just go, oh, let's get that cleared, right? So you also, sometimes the clearing space is not for you. Right? I had to clear when one of my kids was younger. She was just not a good sleeper at all. And I had to clear her room, the energy in her room almost every night just for her to be able to like be okay being in there. Right? So sometimes you want to clear a space for someone else, right? Also, sometimes things won't grow in a certain space. Like you might have a tree or a plant or something that just won't stay alive. Or maybe I'm thinking, years ago, years ago, before I got into energy work, I had a friend that it wasn't a friend, it was a coworker. I remember this coworker telling me the story, like something was wrong with this one room in the house. She felt like it. She wasn't into like energy or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, I wasn't either, like way back then, right? But she was telling me they had like a ferret or something. And she said every time the ferret went in that room, it got sick. And she had gone through all the logical, is there a plant? Maybe it's eating the plant's making it sick. Like what could be in the room that could possibly be making it sick? And she could not find anything. So the solution was ultimately just keep that door closed and don't let the ferret go into that room. And then it stopped getting sick, right? But once you know about space clearings, you could think back to stuff like that and be like, oh, yeah, okay. I see that now. It makes sense. Yeah, there was probably some funky energy in that room, or they could have been a negative entity that was like sort of camped out in that room, and the ferret might have been sensitive to that and would just get sick every time it went in there and was around it. So yeah, so reasons you might want to clear it is it just feels gross, and maybe you have to spend time in that space. Like maybe it's part of your home or your workspace, or maybe it's negatively affecting you or someone that you care about, right? Or maybe, also like if you're going to do healing treatments and stuff in a space, I mean, you want it to feel good. Even if you're a massage therapist or an acupuncturist or chiropractor, like you want your space to feel good. You don't want people to walk in and be like, ugh, because guess what? Then you have to do more work when you're working on them, right? It's better if they feel good when they come into your space. Then they'll feel better when they leave too. Things might not grow or thrive in the space. And another reason too, this isn't like an exhaustive list, but I'm just thinking the most common reasons that people want to clear a space. Can't sleep. That's a big one. Or scared. Anybody that's like, if you're scared or really uncomfortable in a space, but also if it wasn't always your space, right? If you like move into a house, like you take ownership of a house or an apartment, or, maybe like sometimes you switch up rooms in a house, like maybe what was your son's bedroom is now going to be your art studio or something like that. So when you take ownership of a space, you may want to clear out any energy, like residual energy that's kind of hanging out from the prior occupant. All right, makes sense? Okay, good. So now we know what a space clearing is. And now aren't you impressed? I'm doing this without talking points. I have no sticky notes today. So we talked about what a space clearing is, what that means. We talked about why you might want to do it. So what do you say now we get into like how to do it? Okay. Yeah, sure. Love to. Okay, great. I'll be happy to do that. So I personally, there's a lot of ways that you can do it, like a lot. I'm going to tell you 3 that are super duper simple. Okay. And I'm also going to give you a couple little like, I guess we could call them like add-ons or upgrades that are sort of optional. So I would say if this resonates with you, do it. And if not, don't worry about it. But my friend Will was actually the first one back in the day who taught me how to do a space clearing. And Will always likes to call in, some of you guys have met Will, right? The landscaper turned healer. He went through the whole, what's her name? Barbara Brennan. He went through the whole Barbara Brennan program, school, graduated, all that kind of stuff, right? So Hands of Light, you probably have seen that book. It's like, on the cover. Anyway, Will taught me how to do a space clearing. Will loves calling the light. He always calls in the light. So he starts any kind of clearing by calling in the light, and space clearings are no different, right? So that's how he'll start. And he just literally says, okay, first we're going to call in the light. And then he says a little sort of spontaneous, you might call it a prayer, you might call it an opening, you might call it an intention. But he, may say something like, okay, we're going to do this healing work. We'd like to call in the light. We want to call in, whatever else you want to call in, like guardian angels, highest and best, whatever comes to mind, right? So that's a little sort of optional add-on that you could do. I'm going to show you teach you 3 ways to clear a room. First way is probably a way that you've heard of, and that is smudging. Now, the first time somebody told me they were going to smudge a space in my house, I was thinking, am I going to have to clean after? Like, I thought they were going to, if you think about the definition of smudge, it's like, come here, you got a little schmutz there on your face, little smudge, right? It's like, it doesn't sound like a clean thing. So how are we going to clean and clear a space if we're smudging it? I know it's a weird word, but that just is what it is. Now let's see if you notice what's different. You could buy a bundle of sage, white sage is usually, and sometimes they're like itsy bitsy. They're like this big, and sometimes they're like huge, and sometimes the leaves are bigger. Like this, it kind of looks like a big old, I know, right? And it sort of smells a little bit like it when you burn it too. I'm not gonna lie, but definitely I would not recommend that you try and smoke it. Okay. And you're going to light the end of it, and it's going to, it doesn't smoke a ton. Like you probably won't feel like you're smoked out of the space. Okay. And I can tell you, I personally never have had a smoke alarm go off while I was smudging a home or a property. Okay. So it's really not it's not like a crap ton of, what's making that sound? I must be on a laptop. So I'm like, it's muted. Why is it making a sound? It's very, very little smoke, okay? And it doesn't linger, like the way, if no one's ever smoked in your house and someone comes in, like, even if they don't have a lit cigarette, if they're like reeking of smoke, when they leave, your house still smells like smoke. It's not going to be like that. Okay. It dissipates fairly quickly, and it doesn't like cling to your draperies and your, linens and stuff and your upholstery like cigarette smoke would. Okay. So don't worry about that. But you're going to light the end of it. It's just going to glow like a little bit, and it'll leave like really like a little tendril of smoke kind of. And if it goes out, you can relight it. It doesn't mean anything. If it goes out while you're doing a smudge, you're smudging, it does it all the time. It's no big deal. Okay. So all you do is you light that, and then you walk around the house. What could be easier than that? Now, when I do it, here's another one of those little optional steps. When I do it, I set an intention first. As I'm lighting the bundle of sage, and yeah, little pieces fall off and stuff. See, I shouldn't talk while I'm doing it, because I talk with my hands and the little bits will be flying everywhere. But as I'm lighting the bundle of sage, I'm setting the intention that we're about to clear out any negative energy and any negative entities and any unwanted energy that is hanging around the space. And I'm sending all of this back to the divine so that it can be transmuted, and it can only return to this space and to the people that occupy this space when it is for their highest blessing and their highest good. Okay. So that's my little, like, what I say. No, I can't repeat it. I have no idea what I just said. I told you that in the moment. Rewind if you forgot. Because I know somebody's like, wait, I didn't get that. Rewind. So, yeah, that's what I do. And then I like have this little system again. I could be like the teensiest bit OCD. I don't know. But I would say do this however feels good to you. But I sort of like to go side to side, top to bottom. Okay. So like I like to have a system to how I do it. Not so much because I need that order and control, although I do like order and I like control. I'm happy in those situations. But it's really so I don't miss anything, right? Because I have like a super short-term memory. And, if I just like went, let's do the bedroom. Oh, now let's go downstairs. Oh, let's do that. I'd probably forget some spaces. So I kind of feel like, if the house was totally empty and you were cleaning it to move out the house or the space or whatever, you'd probably do it kind of systematically. Like maybe you do all the bathrooms, and then you do all the bedrooms, and then you do all the carpets. Like, you'd have some kind of system, or you'd start in one corner, do the whole top floor, and then go down and do the whole middle floor, and then go down and do the whole basement, whatever. That's personally how I like to do it. I pick one corner of the topmost floor of the house or property, and I start in that room, and I work either clockwise or counterclockwise, kind of whatever I feel like, but then I will do it like systematically on all the lower floors, any kind of like basement, if the attic is accessible. If not, I'll intend that all that gets handled first, and then we do the top floor and whatever. So I like to do it that way so that I don't miss anything. And I also feel like if you're kind of sweeping out energy, like it makes sense that you wouldn't be tracking back and forth, right? Like you'd start in one spot and just sort of work your way out, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, so like if I was starting in this room, which I wouldn't, because I don't know, it's sort of the way my house is set up. I would start in the master, and then this room would be second, or I'd start in the kids' room and then work my way back. But either the master would be either first or last, because that's sort of like on an end, right? But I'm just kind of funny like that. You could totally do this. There's no like wrong way to pick which rooms to do, okay? But I would probably, if I was now moving on to this room, then I would go like, I would just kind of sweep my hand kind of like this. And so I go like side to side, top to bottom. And I also like, so I've usually got either the weaver in one hand or the sage in the other hand, and I'm just doing it, okay? So yeah, I'd go like side to side, top to bottom, and then this side, and then this side, and then this side, the 4 walls, right? Now, if there's any substantial pieces of furniture, especially if they have drawers or cabinets or cupboards or hidden spaces or whatever, I just consciously am sweeping those spaces as well, right? So in my office, you could see there's a table and I have a huge crystal singing bowl underneath that table. And like energy could get trapped in that bowl. Do you know what I mean? So like as I'm sweeping, I'm consciously doing that bowl. And then you can't see it, but right over here is my little 2-drawer file cabinet. And then I have like a Zen, sand garden like on top of it. But anyway, like those are drawers and there's a lot of files in those. I don't want anything hanging out in those files, right? So I would also clear those spaces. And I have a little, well, I think you can see it. Yeah, like I have a little sofa in my office. So when I get over there it's like kind of like a little futon thing. When I get over there, I would do behind and beneath it. Right? Because I don't want anything hiding out. And I got a little fridge in the corner. I do inside the fridge, right? So I do like all of those spaces. And then before I leave this room, I check using my pendulum or using a weaver to ask, is the energy in this room clear? Is it optimal to move on? If it is, then I go out and do the hallway, right? And then I do the next room. So I go through the whole house like that. It's taking me longer to explain this pretty much than it does to do it. Like my house is pretty big and we have a basement. So there's really 3 stories to do. Plus then I do the exterior. So I do the whole inside. And then I usually intend as soon as I open the door to go outside, that anything that's left just goes on out with me, like goes out the door, not with me, but like goes out the door when I go out the door. And then I do the property, right? And so to do my entire house and the property, I mean, it's less than half an hour. It maybe takes me 20 minutes. Okay. And if you like have a 2-bedroom apartment, I mean, you should be done in like 10 minutes. Like it really does not take that long. Okay. But don't skip any room. Don't skip the linen closet. Don't skip the bathroom. To me, if you're really clearing a space, you're clearing everything. All right. So that's how you do it with the sage bundle is you just walking around. If it goes out, relight it. Right now, you might notice it may go out multiple times in one room. That's probably the room that needs most attention. Okay. You can also do the whole house and then ask if the whole house is clear. And if not, you can, which room do I need to go back into, whatever, etc. I just find it easier to like check the room before I leave the room. That way, once I leave the room, I know that's done. And I go on to the next room. And then every time I leave a room, I know it's done and I can just move on. Okay. So that's the sage bundle. And by the way, the process I just described is the same for all of it, for all 3 of these that I'm going to show you. So it's really just a matter of which tool you want to use as you're going through the house or the property systematically to clear everything. Okay. So besides the sage bundle, you can also use an Etheric Weaver, which I happen to have right here. Love my Etheric Weaver. It shows up a lot in client sessions and also when I'm doing clearings for myself, although I say more often in client sessions. This is what an Etheric Weaver looks like. It's a crystal that has magnets on either side of it and it's wrapped in copper wire. And it's like a pendulum, but like mine's big. It's like, I think it's like 3.5 inches or something. It has a hair stuck on it. Don't mind the hair. And they come in different colors and different metals and whatever, right? So you can use an Etheric Weaver. Same thing, exact same thing, except what I would do is I would hold the Etheric Weaver while I'm doing the sweep, right? Top, side to side, top to bottom, side to side, top to bottom, etc., etc. And then once the weaver, for me, my sign with the weaver is it will stop and shake when it's done. And that's how I know it's done. So once the weaver stops and shakes, I know I'm done with that room and I go on to the next room, okay? Could you use a pendulum instead of an Etheric Weaver? Have you seen my YouTube videos? Of course you can. I know the people that make the Etheric Weavers don't like me telling you that, but I'll tell you what, it's all about intention, right? So you absolutely, positively, this is my original, very first pendulum. You absolutely, which just broke last week, the end, the bead. It had it's lapis lazuli, but it had a different kind of bead on the end. I think it was labradorite, just fell right off. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I've had this thing a long time. You could do it the exact same way, right? And I would do it the same way where you're like intending. You could even just sit or stand in the middle of the room and just wait until the thing tells you it's done. And that might be for you. That might be holding it. And then again, I'm just holding the intention that this is clearing out all of the untoward energy in the room. For me, it would stop and shake. When it's done, for you, maybe you'd yawn, or the pendulum would stop moving, or it would suddenly switch to a no when you're asking if there's anything else clear or whatever. Okay. So first way is sage, second way is pendulum / etheric weaver. And the third way is with a singing bowl. Remember I said earlier, hey, did you notice what's missing? Because I did a little cut on the, I spliced in on the video. I moved my bowl, was over on that table, my singing bowl, and I moved it and put it over on next to me on my desk so I wouldn't have to get up. All right, so I love this thing, by the way. I don't know where all you get these. I got mine from Savannah, which has some really cool stuff. But I used to hold my bowl like this when you're playing it, which is a really good way to get carpal tunnel. It's really not, it's like, this is not light. I mean, really, it's brass, it's heavy. And it's like not a thing that you want to be holding like this. If you have a big house and it's going to be like 20 something minutes, you'll give yourself carpal tunnel. So they make these little pads that, it's called a singing bowl rest, I think it's called, or I forget what it's called. But see how it's got that, like that little indentation? Just like, you know, like sofa cushions, old sofa cushions do, kind of thing, that button and thing. And so what that does is that allows the bowl to sit so that you can very comfortably have it in your hand. But having that indentation, this is why you wouldn't just like use a pillow or something. Having that indentation allows the sound vibrations to last longer, right? Other than, because if it was smooth, it would like muffle the sound quicker, right? And it sounds lovely, right? If you're more auditory than visual, then you might prefer to use this method as opposed to the burning sage or the etheric weaver, right? And what I do is I just walk around the same thing. I like walk around the room, and I may even use the striker that usually comes with your bowl. I may just use the striker to go side to side, top to bottom, right? And then strike it again, side to side, top to bottom. There's no like wrong way to do this, right? Just trust your intuition and go with whatever you get. Now, I have heard singing bowls make some funky sounds. When you get to a room where there is something jacked about the energy in that room, the singing bowl could sound really muffled. The tone could change, like, or you're just like, that just sounds weird. I would just keep banging on that until it sounds better. I'll put it by the mic. And nice and clean and clear. And then you could always like use your pendulum then to check. Because if you're like, okay, I just did the singing bowl. Let's see if we're done. Is this room done? Right? And if you get a no, then it's like, okay, more singing bowl. Now, if you have a friend that is clearing the space with you, which is the first time somebody smudged my house, that's how it went down. Okay, there was 2 people, because I was like, you keep saying smudge. What is this smudge? Like, am I going to have like soot all over my walls? That was all I could picture every time she said smudge, right? Because I didn't know. There were 2 of them, and one person walked around and played their singing bowl, and the other person had the sage and was intending that each space in the house got cleared until she got all the way through the house. They actually these 2 friends actually did this for me years ago when we moved into a new house, right? It wasn't this house. It was a couple houses ago, but that was like part of their like housewarming, whatever. Like we had a little housewarming party, and they came and did that at the beginning of the party. It was really cool. It was the first time I had ever knew anything about burning sage or smudge or whatever. So, yeah. So if you have a friend that like one person could do the weaver and clear everything, the other person can play the bowl, you can like whatever, you can mix and match, right? Make it a party. It could be super fun. All right, so if you have questions about how to do a space clearing using any of these 3 tools, well, ask them and I'll answer them, right? You can ask me anything. So, and if not, then maybe you should go clear space and see what happens. And I will leave you with one more strike before we're on our way here. Look at that bowl. It's so awesome. Happy clearing!